She leads, she thrives. The home of inspired conversations, practical and creative wisdom, expansive leadership and business insights, abundant braggadocious moments of celebration, and useful info you can actually do something with. You'll hear about mindset, marketing, money, magnetism, self-awareness and the Thrive Factor framework, its archetypes, and more. Amplify your role as a leader, a self-led soul. Tap into your effortless success zone. Turn your ingeniousness and wisdom into profitable income streams. From solo shows to guests you'll definitely want more from, there's something for every ambitious, ingenious soul. I'm Shannon Dunn, a true OG of the business coaching space with an obsession with thriving. You are so welcome here. Let's dive into today's episode. Hey everyone, it's Shannon here, your host of She Leads, She Thrives. I have a special message for you ahead of this week's episode where I'm talking to the incredible Kerryn Slater, who's one of the licensed Thrive Factor coaches and such a phenomenal soul. You're going to love what Kerryn and I talked about. But ahead of this, I also wanted to say that starting next week on the 21st of March, 2023, I'm hosting a 4-part live immersive challenge, Thrive as a Coach. This is for you if you want to be a coach, if you're a new coach, if you're an established coach. We're going to be exploring the attributes and the skills and all the things that are going to support you to thrive as a coach. And I'm going to definitely be talking about the value of being an actual qualified coach, actually doing training and having a framework that supports you with your coaching moving forward so that you can really make the impact you want to create in the world. There's going to be a link in the show notes for you to sign up. If you follow me on social media, all the links are going to be there. Come and join us. 21st of March, we start. That's going to be in the morning Australian time where I am on the West Coast. That'll be the Tuesday evening for those of you that are in the US. There's replays, recordings, a pop-up Facebook group. All of the cool things are going to be happening in that 4-part experience, which will go over 3 parts in that first week. And then we're going to have a live Q&A the following week. I can't wait to welcome you into that. It's going to be lots of fun, as I said, lots of opportunity for you to really challenge yourself and to expand in such an incredible way as a coach. As I said, make an impact in the world because I don't know about you, but that's what I know I'm here to do. I'll see you there. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Shannon Dunn, business and leadership coach and host here at She Leads, She Thrives podcast. And I've got a new guest for us today. Very excited to speak to this gorgeous soul. So Kerryn Slater has joined me today. I've known Kerryn for a few years. I'll lose track of time in a good way, right? And while I will share her kind of official intro bio in a moment, like I've been doing with the other guests on the show, telling you how I know these beautiful women, because the intention for as long as it can continue, and I feel like this is the whole lifetime of the show, however long that may be, is to have women come here and be guests on She Leads, She Thrives that I actually have a genuine connection with. And I do know Kerryn extremely well, right? Yeah, yeah, very well. So Kerryn and I, as I said, we met some time ago online. I think it was when we were both going to be part of an event that we ended up speaking at. And we connected through that space. Kerryn came and did a profiling experience. She learned her Thrive Factor Archetypes. Then we finally got to meet up, oh goodness, nearly a year later when we were in Fiji at the Ultimate Girls Week Away event. If you've listened to the episode I did with Stasha Washburn, I mentioned that same event then. So, Stasha and I were at that event too. So was Kerryn. And that was the first time Kerryn and I got to meet in person because she's also in Australia, but on the other side of the country from me. And it was like, instant love, wasn't it? In the best possible way. And then from there, Kerryn went on to also become a certified or licensed and certified Thrive Factor coach. So she's been in my world in many different ways and is a long-term private client of mine. And I know my world is better for having you as a client and now a friend. So I'm so excited to see what we talk about today.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you.
So officially, let me tell everyone a little bit more about you from that kind of your bio perspective. So Kerryn Slater is the inspired spiritual alchemist on a mission to support you to gain true purpose, clarity, heal your body and mind, and connect to a joyous life. She's a fierce advocate for your awakening. I know we're going to talk about awakening definitely in our episode today. She loves to learn and has gathered an abundance of tools and expertise. She's highly qualified and has a wealth of wisdom, she says generously. just like sidelining, thinking about as I'm sharing this with everyone, if anyone knows anything about the Thrive Factor archetypes, you should be able to pick what Kerryn's are from her bio. Her business, Holistic Essentials Therapy and Consulting, has been the channel to reconnect to your wisdom as you learn to trust being supported by the universe's beautiful energy. As a certified meditation teacher, self-discovery master coach, hypnosis practitioner, Reiki master teacher, theta healer, psychic medium, and Thrive Factor coach, she's a wealth of wisdom and inspiration with an ability to hold space for genuine transformation. She is inspired to work with people who are ready to make change in their lives, ready to understand the true meaning of empowerment, ready to be the change they wish to see in the world, and ready for overall well-being in all areas of their lives. Well, that's a mouthful in a good way.
I know. I was thinking, oh yes, they'll guess my archetypes for sure.
I always find it interesting having someone read out, your bio and the official, this is who I am from a business perspective, and listening back and going, oh wow, listen to me, look at me go. So I hope you had that same experience then.
Absolutely.
So huge welcome. Is there anything I didn't share then in that welcome that you want to add in before we dive in?
I think you've well and truly covered it.
I love it. So let's start with your Thrive Factor archetypes. We've kind of referenced them a few times already. Tell everyone what you've got, and maybe just a little bit about how each of your 4 archetypes plays out in your business. Like, what does it do in terms of the influence of those beautiful archetypes and the connection, or I guess interaction of them in a harmonious and sometimes not so harmonious way? How does that play out in your life and your work?
Beautiful question. Thank you. I have 4 of the Thrive Factor archetypes. They are the Advocate Rescuer. I always go in alphabetical order.
Well, so do I when I do.
The Advocate Rescuer. I'll be in trouble now if I mess up the alphabet, won't I?
No.
She is, I really love having this archetype. She really is so deeply feeling and sensitive, empathic. She has, a capacity for compassion, to feel real, genuine compassion for others, more importantly, for herself. And advocating also for me in my life, and how that's played out is really being able to advocate for women to be able to, because I do work primarily with women, to be able to speak their truth, to be able to ask for what they want in their lives, to be able to set healthy boundaries, and to be able to put themselves first. Because with the Advocate Rescuer, that archetype, she is the yes woman. She is all about giving all of herself, her time, her resources, her energy, her money, like anything to those people.
Yeah, whether she's got it or not.
Exactly. That's so true. And so many of the women, especially when we're looking at through the lens of my business, so many of the women that I work with are so depleted and exhausted, and they don't have anything left. Their cups are empty. And and I think she's been a big driver for me in my own life, in my own journey of discovery and healing, and finding my purpose and my way in the world. And self-acceptance and self-love is very much a big part of that. Mainly though, having compassion and kindness for myself, because for such a long time, the way that I spoke internally and thought internally about myself was really unhealthy. It was really quite negative. And so, and that's what I see reflected also and that is a driving force also in my business, is to be able to support and guide women to be able to think better about themselves, to be kinder to themselves, to acknowledge and recognize all of the wonderful gifts that they are, just for being who they are and not who they think they should be, or what somebody else has told them they should be. Yes.
So when I first connected with you, your generosity of spirit, really, it just is exactly who you are, is generous, kind, caring, always checking in on others. But when we got to know each other a little better, I could see that wasn't as effortless as you desired it to be for yourself. So it has truly been such a joy to be in the space that I've been in our relationship, to remind you that you can do all that for yourself, and to see you blossom into a space of that understanding what self-compassion means. and practicing that with more kindness than I think you did even a year or 18 months ago. So that's been a joy. And then that is just another example of how you practice what you teach and model for other women.
It is, absolutely. It's a daily practice, and it is a daily reminder. And when you are lucky enough to have beautiful, inspiring women around you who support you and value you and see you for who you are, then, you know, it's wonderful to be able to be reminded, you know, that you have that within you, because when you are focusing your attention so often externally, you know, and especially in business, it's focused on your business, it's focused on your clients, it's focused on what you're creating, that while you might be doing the self-care work, sometimes you may not be doing it as deeply or as often as is needed. So I've been very grateful for those reminders. Thank you, Shannon, along the journey.
Happy to give them. I feel like that's one of my greatest joys in my role, coaching and teaching and guiding and mentoring and all those different things I do with my clients and with our Thrive Factor coach community, is to be a mirror if needs be, to say, look at yourself. Look at what you've got, look at what you've created, and to be that, or sometimes I know, potentially annoying niggle that's going to keep poking and say, can you just see, please, can you just do something with this? Which is so good. And then we can thank my visionary creator for seeing the potential of where you're all going to go in the future too. So
yes, we all love your visionary creator, Shannon. We love her.
Great. So that's your advocate rescuer. So moving along the alphabet.
My inspire believer. So the next one is, I have the inspire believer archetype. And she's, you know, and it just makes so much sense too, because so much of everything that I do and everything about me is energy. You know, how am I feeling energetically? What is the energy around me? What am I giving my energy to? But also within that, you know, I always took for granted in having the capacity and the ability to be able to see the gifts and even the magic in other people. And, you know, seeing what it's more like being able to, for me, myself personally, being able to see the truest essence of a person.
Oh, I like that.
And often when they are completely unaware that is the essence of who they are. And you know, and there's so many factors in that. And this is why I do so much with, you know, the subconscious and the mental mind and healing and energies and frequencies and meditation in my business, is because I'm wanting, and again, very much inspire a believer, to hold the mirror up for others to see it for themselves, but be able to hold and provide the space for them to safely journey within, for them to discover that for themselves. And, you know, but as we know with the inspire a believer, burnout is a very real thing. And especially over the last few years, she has well and truly lost her mojo. But having the understanding of this archetype and being able to, you know, even just do something as simple as looking back at what you have achieved, or content that you've put out, or, you know, reading feedback that you've received, or testimonies, or even just looking at what you've created, whether it's in your business or just in your life in general, has been a really powerful way to re-inspire her energy. But for me also, it's really, you know, it's really tapping into, well, what does inspire me? Not just about me, but what inspires me in life, or about humanity, you know, all the feel good stuff that really does help to bring her back into balance and alignment. Because for a lot of my life, you know, the real energetic highs and then the lows have been something that, you know, I really experienced a lot, especially in my early adult years, and just trying to figure out why I couldn't just have that nice medium balance, you know, of harmony. You know, could I just have a steady line for a little bit?
So I am laughing because as you know, Kerryn, I understand that because I also have the Inspire Believer archetype. So it's a lived experience for myself also. And we talk about this archetype as you know, her currency is energy, if we have to
Yeah,
talk about a key
this is
theme,
true.
which is exactly what you said at the beginning. Your energy is such a core part of your work and your life. So it made sense that certainly you have this archetype, but you also understand how to use her
Mm.
to rise to your own potential and to expand in ways you wish to expand and to have more of a sustained energy. The peaks and troughs and energy of the Inspire Believer are always so interesting to understand, to reflect on, and to navigate. I found, and so many of the amazing women that we both know in the kind of broader Thrive Factor community also all have this archetype. And isn't it interesting when somebody's in a, like we call it the cave, don't we, of despair, when it can sound very dramatic, but
It
for an
does sound very
Inspire,
dramatic, but I think that's
true, right?
appropriate also for this archetype.
Exactly. And it really can feel like at times when you have this archetype that you are at the peak of highest of highs. And it's not like an addiction kind of high, but in some ways
No.
you could say that in
Mm.
some ways that the energetic, you know, you've got a lot of the energy, you're excited. It's a very excitable archetype when she's in that space. And then the other extreme does feel like, and that's why we call it the cave of despair or hopelessness. It can be, you can go from one to the other quite quickly. And I always have found that fascinating. Like, how can I have had such an amazing morning, even, or day yesterday, and now I feel terrible, or I can't see what the good was that I could see momentarily ago? Like, where is that all gone? And it's about understanding what's driving that. And very much as we talk about, don't we, when we teach around this archetype, is that the gift she gives herself, which therefore ripples out to everybody else, is allowing herself. It's a very much, I feel like, an allowing thing to be
Mm.
inspired by who she is, what she's creating, and what she's sharing in the world as a priority, because this archetype will
Absolutely.
go externally for inspiration all the time. Yeah.
And you know what I love too? Like, it's not, and especially as women, as young girls, it is not what we are taught
No,
growing up. You're not encouraged or taught to really be inspired by yourself, because
not at all.
old school, all of the language around that and the messages that you take in subconsciously, can really impact your ability, especially in having this archetype, to feel comfortable to actually do that. So I
Yes.
I really, that was something for me to really work on in having this archetype, was focusing my attention on that. And it was almost, what I loved too was, it was like, oh, someone's actually given me permission.
Mm,
I now have permission, and it's fully acceptable for me to be inspired by who I am, what I've done, what I've achieved, what I've created, and how far I've come in my life, and just who I am as a person. You know,
right.
I like who I am as a person. I'm like, man, that's,
Yeah.
and it's like, that shouldn't be, that shouldn't be a surprise to be
No.
able to say that. And what I love about these archetypes and the framework, the Thrive Factor framework, is how empowering it is to each and every one of us who know what our archetypes are,
Yeah.
to really be excited and inspired, and I guess opened up, especially from a heart-centered space, even even acknowledging and embracing your own intellect, you know and allowing that to be your superpower.
I know there's so many facets of it, which when we think broadly, and if anyone's listening to Kerryn and I talking about the archetypes and you haven't yet gone and listened to my solo episode where I introduce all 12 of them, go and do that. We'll make sure it's linked in the show notes. It's easy to find. So you get a high level overview of them. But if you know your archetypes and you know, or you're listening to what the archetypes of Kerryn's that we're talking about today, and you're like, yeah, that's right, I've got that one. And you've forgotten how amazing you are. It's a really good reminder, as you said, Kerryn. It's a space of empowerment. You know, the archetypes were created as a leadership framework with a focus on self-leadership and really tapping into your innate potential. You know, innate being a word that describes what we're born with. And yet, during the course of our life, often in our childhood, we become disconnected from our potential so frequently. And as you rightfully pointed out, there is different things happening in the world, our lived experiences, going to school, for example, certain relationships we may have with family and older people when we were children, that teach us different messaging and teach us that we look externally for answers, solutions, for inspiration, for creativity, for justification, for intelligence, for wisdom, and yet we have it within us.
So
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yeah. So inspire believers, if you are listening to what Kerryn's saying and the little bit I'm adding to that, this is an archetype that has incredible potential and a gift for seeing the potential in others, that, the good that others see in the world. It's an archetype that is here to be inspired, but more to be an inspiration. And she often talks about wanting to be inspirational and not recognizing that she already is. Yeah, it's a very genuinely humble approach. It's not a denial of her potential necessarily. It's just takes a while to see it. And there's definitely some concern around, I'm going to sound like I have a lot of ego if I'm telling people that I love what I do and I'm excited and I'm inspired by me. No, we need more of that, right?
That's such a great point, actually, because ego does come into that. And again, that comes back to our childhood conditioning and programming. And I just love too that this archetype also, I really just think that she has such an incredible ability to ignite, and she's depicted in your artistry, with the fire and the flame.
Flames.
But she really does have the ability to ignite that flame of excitement, curiosity, passion, motivation in others. And just coming back to what you were saying about it, being a humble archetype, and I know you can relate to this as well, and I'm sure those that are out there that have this archetype can too. You don't actually have to think about what you're doing. It's not like it's not structured, it's not planned. It's just so natural in being able to have, and she's highly intuitive as well, to be able to see those qualities in others and being able to just, we just share what excites us because it excites us. You don't sit back and go, oh, look, I've created this ripple effect, or I've had this impact on somebody's life, or and often I'll see people that I've worked with and I'll go, wow, look at what they're doing, like that's amazing, good on them. But again, it's just like you might put the dots together and go, I don't go, oh man, she's doing so amazingly well because we work together.
No.
I just look how amazing she's doing now that she can see the brilliance of who she is, or she's, tapped into her own inequalities and strengths and gifts, and she's out there sharing that with the world. That's what inspires me. So yeah, you don't look at it and go, oh, I did that. But yeah.
But, there are people out there that do take responsibility, and we both see that in the coaching space, particularly, that will very happily and with the greatest of pride take responsibility for a client's results. We're co-creators with our clients.
Yes.
But the outcomes that they receive and experience are because of what they did. Yes, you may have taught them something, coached them through something, guided them through something, but they are the ones that did the work,
took the
action.
Yeah.
And hopefully consistently you did whatever they wanted to do and they got the results. But it is interesting to see that. And I find it such a fascinating thing. I know I've had, related to the Inspire Believer, I've had conversations over the years with clients that I may have worked with, well, these days, well and truly more than a decade ago, who I might see show up in my social media feed, or I might, if they're local, bump into them at a networking event or something. And I've kept track of what they've done just because I am open to receiving, feedback and seeing, and I want to, see the results of what they achieve long term. And the greatest joy for me is when I know that, say, we had a conversation, say a decade, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and there you are living that thing you told me you wanted to do, or you've even gone beyond that, or watching your children grow up and seeing what they're doing when you've shared the dreams you had for them, like all of those kind of things. And I love to be the person who goes in and sends a message. And so many people said to me, I've never worked with someone who's ever done that. Like, we're now our time together is ended, whether it's a program, a private work we've done or something, and I've stopped paying the person, I never hear from them again. And I know that that's my inspirer believer who's like, what's everyone doing? It's
Yes.
like a sticky beak, but also because I get so inspired because I see the results long term of the seeds that they planted, the nurturing they gave those seeds, and what they've done to bring those to life. And yes, I may have had a small influence on some of that, but it's such a joy for my inspirer believer and keeps me motivated to keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, it's inspiring, isn't it?
So much,
Yeah,
so much.
it
That's
is
all we
to be
need.
able to see that. Yes, I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Yes, so
So
true.
moving along, we can talk about the inspirer believer for days, but moving along to the other archetype of your four that you and I share, that we can have a real deep rant about this archetype and her. I know she frustrates you a lot. So tell us about her.
So my next Thrive Factor archetype is the mentor teacher.
Mm.
And it's so funny, when I discovered that I had this archetype, immediately what flashed to me was, as a child, we had this old fashioned school desk,
Like with the inkwell. Yeah.
the wooden ones, you lifted up the
Yes.
lid and
I
it had the
remember.
steel, rounded legs. I'm probably not describing it right.
I know.
And
I
and and
visualize
I'm the
exactly.
eldest of 5 siblings, and I'm standing out the front there with my ruler, trying to teach these like tiny, tiny kids.
Oh, and I think every mentor teacher probably has some similar memory because I certainly do. But with only having 2 younger brothers and one of them quite a bit younger than me, there was only one student in my class who's still my brother, who's closest to me in age and in his late 40s now, still tells me it's my fault that he hated actual school.
Oh, I just find it so funny, but I find it also incredibly fascinating. I've always felt that if we were to go back to what we did naturally as children, or
Mm.
what we were excited about, or what we were interested in childhood, and I find it so amazing to then see and experience and have shared with me from everyone around me, how they're falling into or finding themselves in positions or careers or passions that are so directly linked to what we naturally did as children, which I love how that ties into, the innateness of the archetypes
Mm.
that we have, because I know that, you've spoken before of how you do believe and feel that we're born with these qualities, with these archetypes, and
Completely.
that resonates so deeply with me. And so I guess too, I always found myself going through my working career in positions of either training or teaching, or helping and supporting and guiding others to do whatever they needed to do in a learning capacity. And that is plays a huge part in all of what I do in my business, because running workshops and retreats and teaching and passing on healing modalities and everything else. I do love this archetype. I love the wisdom that she has, because for so long, and I know we've talked about this before, there's that I just honestly believe that the mentor teacher archetype can tap into universal consciousness and the collective, and whatever information is floating around out there from, incredible teachers, past, present, and future, that you can just tap into that. Because so often I would just know, intuitively, what needed to be done, or what direction to take, or the answer to a question, without being able to back it up
Right.
with
And it's,
anything concrete.
yeah.
I wouldn't be able to provide proof of how I knew that. And I know we've chatted about this, which has really led, to, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who have this archetype that can resonate. It really does lead to not always trusting in your own inner wisdom.
Completely. So what you just described there, I visualize that as the mentor teachers of the world. We are the keepers of the knowledge.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So I could hear your Shapeshifter Alchemist, which we'll talk about next, definitely having an influence on the way you talked about tapping into the universal, knowledge. But there is this energy of a mentor teacher comes to the world knowing things.
Mm.
And as you explained, Kerryn, we don't know how. And as little ones, we tend to share because it, like the Inspire Believer, and you've got, like you and I both have the double whammy of that, it can be a very oversharing archetype, right?
Just a
So
little
we
bit.
tend to tell people what we know. We tend to share our reflections. I know for me, it was around observing dynamics in relationships in my family and being told that I shouldn't know that and to be quiet because that wasn't what a child should be saying, kind of thing. And now as a adult, I can see that I nailed it. Like I kind of
Yeah.
highlighted stuff that no one wanted to be talking about.
Mhm.
But there is this energy of this, I don't know how I know. I don't have the proof. I don't have anything to back it up. And yet, as we get older, and particularly, I think when we go to traditional schooling, then we have this messaging coming in saying you need to prove how you got
Mm.
the answer. You need to
Mhm.
show a reference. You need to, so we can often disconnect from that knowing. And as you said, trusting that knowing.
Mhm.
Talk to me more about your lived experience of that.
Well, I guess for me, I didn't love school.
Mm.
So I guess
You're a
that was one
shapeshifter
of,
alchemist. Is
I
that what?
know, right? Which makes perfect sense now. Um, so for me, I really found, and again, that came back to that questioning, having to prove, or
Mm,
being questioned, and then feeling that self-doubt and that insecurity of like, well, okay, well, if a figure of authority does not believe me or is questioning what I'm saying, then maybe I shouldn't be saying it.
yes.
So I think, for a long time, I was silent.
Mm,
And I was like, well, I'm just going to keep all of this to myself. And of course, there's a lot more in that will probably come through when we talk about my shapeshifter. But, it was, the messaging was there, was that it wasn't safe.
yes.
Actually, I learned very young that it wasn't safe to speak up or share what I knew, or, because otherwise, you just got told you're a smart ass.
Well, there was that. There was many different responses that we may have received,
Yes.
right? That being one of them. Yeah, smart ass,
Yes.
smarty pants, show off,
Show
knowledge.
off. Yeah.
I know that I did enjoy school. I have a different experience to you, but I have a different like we have two archetypes the same, the other two we have are quite different. School was relatively easy for me from a learning experience. The social part I did not like at all. And that is because I think my visionary creator was in a whole different realm, like your shapeshifter alchemist was.
Yes.
But there was feedback, use that word to be kind, that came from peers, even from
Mm.
teachers around,
Yes.
oh, you got an A again, or you did this again, or like the
Yes.
achievements that you had, or the knowing the answers. And very much it's such a common thing. And I have heard this from, I would say, every mentor teacher I have profiled, and it's a lot of them because the mentor teacher and Inspire Believer are the most frequently seen archetypes in the women that I have the joy and honor of working with. But they say that I got to a point, and safety is definitely the word, you just use that so appropriately, where I didn't feel safe to share, where I was told it was not okay to say what inside of me was almost like burning up, saying I need to tell someone this.
Mm.
And we were
Mm-hmm.
shut down. And so the mistrust just amplifies over and over and over again.
And something I think, and you can share what you think about this,
Yeah.
but just something that's dropped in for me, and an observation that I have just realized is that with the mentor teacher, especially in a child or a young adult, comes a maturity. So
Yeah.
they're older than their years. And so it was just very easy to contribute to adult conversations
Mm.
because you had an understanding conceptually and emotionally of what was actually going on, being discussed, what the conversations were. And then to be told, I guess, too, that, well, you're a child, you should be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
Or not
Or
having your
hang,
contributions valued
go and
or
hang with the other
acknowledged.
children.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Whereas I always was more interested in, spending time with older
Mm.
older kids, older people, young adults. I connected more with them. I felt like I had more in common with them than a lot of the people, a lot of the kids that I was, friends with, that I was growing
Yes,
up with that were my same age.
definitely. I
Yeah,
100%
peers
agree
is the
with
right word. Thank you.
100% agree with that. Is the wisdom that comes with this. And let me just share this for a moment for anyone who's listening. And if you may have heard me share in other episodes where I've talked about wisdom, I've talked about ingenuousness, I've talked about lived and learned experience. Wisdom, to me, the way I have been able to understand it, is the combination of our lived and learned experience and our intuition.
Yes.
Yeah. The uniqueness of the mentor teacher archetype is that we come to the world in physical form having a depth of wisdom, even though we don't yet have lived experience, because we're
Yes.
bringing in other things. We're bringing in, that's a whole nother episode, right? To talk about.
Amazing episode to talk about.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
we'll do that in a whole nother realm, literally. So there's, it is said, and then the world tells us that you need to go to school or you need to do certain things to learn certain things. And yet so many mentor teachers find themselves throughout their lifetime sitting in some kind of a learning environment, both online now and in person, with this whole kind of all flash almost through their brain that goes, I already know this. And
Oh,
there's
yes.
can be a degree of arrogance if you dare share that outside. Again, it's the world saying, how do you know this? You haven't got the piece of paper to prove this. You haven't finished this course yet. How do you know that? Have you done this already? There's all this questioning and this judgment and this, almost curiosity, but with a judgy tone of, show me that you know this. Whereas a mentor teacher often, as you said earlier, they can't.
Mm.
So the way to work with and nurture mentor teachers, this goes for anyone who's listening, if you have this archetype, but if you've got younger people in your world that you suspect, these are the bookworms, the kids that are learning, reading, doing things, are telling you facts about stuff, wanting to listen into the grown-up conversations, have concepts and things that they'll share with you. And you're like, how do you get that? Because you kind of don't even get it yourself. To encourage them to trust what they know. Let them
Yes.
have a
So
space where they
powerful.
can speak what they know. Because if they don't, they may get to, if you've got the mentor teacher, you'll understand, like Kerryn and I are talking about, you can go through a lot of your life being very quiet, not sharing what all this, as I said, I know for me, it was like this built up well, if you like, a big well of things I wanted to say. Hello, we're on another podcast. No, but as I know, I've been saying this even more recently a lot. If you've got things to say, find a way to say it. You don't have to go and start your own podcast, but if you want to, do, and tell me what it is so we can listen. Find ways to share that, because the more you share, you will find that the right audience, the listeners, will come. They will want to hear what you have to say. They want to be involved in the conversation, because I know mentor teachers are not here to preach from the front. They
No.
like to be involved in conversation and hear your side, and have a bit of a debate and let's see what you think and you think and you think, and bring it all together and glean the wisdom from that whole conversation. So find a place to share that, because the more you do, the more you can learn, or perhaps relearn, to trust that wisdom that you have.
So true. And as you were saying that, I had this visual of, a group of mentor teachers sitting around together and having these philosophical also conversations, and just the expansion, the expansion of their intuition, the expansion of their wisdom, the expansion of also feeling validated and heard and accepted.
Yeah, so much so. When I think of mentor teachers gathering, I have visuals of, the ancient wise
Yes.
people in, like, ancient Greece and in Rome. And when you watch things like Game of Thrones, or the new prequel that's just been out recently, was it House of the Dragon, I think, and the maesters that they speak to, the wise people, the scholars, the learned people, but those learned people who've gone and done all the study and examined and explored and experimented, have the wisdom, which is feeding the curiosity to go and see what else is out there.
So
Yeah.
true. Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. And just, and in what we've been talking about too, in not having that trust in that own inner wisdom, I really feel feeds into the almost frantic need for a mentor teacher to prove themselves through certifications. And I know even when I started my business, and I really wanted to be seen as professional, and I have a lot of personal ethics, and really wanted it to be integral. And because I am a deeply spiritual person, I think there was an even greater drive for me to have a professionality, to be professional, to come across in a way that again would be accepted by the wider community without just being brushed off as being woo-woo. That's a whole other topic.
The whole
being a
Shannon and Kerryn
spiritual
podcast.
being. So that really drove for me the desire to have so many more certifications. And not that I actually needed them, but felt that I needed to have them. And yes, in other areas, I absolutely needed to have them.
Right.
But for a lot of it, I did go into a learning overdrive, because, I had that, well, I have to prove that I am, not worthiness is coming up, but it's not the right word. I had to prove, I felt subconsciously that I had to prove that I had a right to be here in this space,
Right, okay.
doing what I wanted to do, and I have everything that I need to be able to justify that, which is
there you go.
so ridiculous, but very much driven by the mentor teacher. Yes,
Completely. And a thing that I truly believe that every mentor teacher, given the opportunity to reflect on that, would have some similar experience and understanding. I certainly know I have. And sitting in the space of coaching and mentoring, when I have a client who is a mentor teacher, which is 99.9% of you, amazing women, and there's it's almost like a confessional happens at some point. And we have a coaching session, or we're in the group programs or whatever we're doing. And I signed up for, and it's not just a program or a thing or a workshop. It's like multiple all at once.
so many.
Right? It doesn't just happen I just signed up for a thing because I could see the benefit of doing that and acquiring that skill and mastering something, expanding my knowledge and my learning and my thinking, whether it's personal or professional, is when you come to the point of I desire to learn more in a formal setting, it tends to often come from that the mistrust has got much bigger than it had been just recently. And so it does go into overdrive. You say, we start our business, but then at different times during a business. And I've certainly had one long-term client who that is literally like a confessional about every 3 to 4 months. There's a cycle happens, and we've highlighted this, and we kind of try and catch it out before it comes together. And she's definitely better at managing it now. And I say to her, we have this little thing running where it's, if you feel you want to sign up for something, share it. Tell everyone you're going to do it. And if you don't want to tell the world, tell me. And I'm not going to say don't. I'm going to say, is this the best use of your time and money right now? Because we decided that was a really good question for her to check in and to go, wait a second, what am I really trying to achieve here by signing up for this? What
That's
am I
such a
really,
powerful, brilliant question.
Yeah, really trying to feed by doing this or these? As I said, it's rarely one. And that's the other thing that, it's a bit of a fun, playful banter we can have now. But when she will come to me and say, I'm thinking of doing this, and then we go through and we coach through the what's actually going on. Sometimes it's a legitimate, yes, and the action is taken. But then I, as her coach, will step in and go, and what else are you looking at? And she's like, how do you know? I've got other things. Because this is the pattern, and it's a very typical behavioral pattern that can arise with mentor teachers. And it's a sign that you're mistrusting yourself. As I said, most of the time you'll sit in something and you'll be like, I know this. I've read this. I've listened to it. I've done it before in another format. I did a program. Oh, I signed up for something like this, but oh yeah, I didn't finish it because I realized I didn't need it. Coming back to that recognition of I have what I need. I have what I desire, I have the knowledge, I have the wisdom, do something with it is more powerful than doing more learning.
So true. And I've definitely found that, from the moment that I began sharing my wisdom and knowledge through my business, working with clients, that, you learn so much more. I love this too with the mentor teacher. You learn so much more by teaching.
Yes. Agree.
Because the more you actually share your wisdom and your knowledge and you pass that on, you learn more about that as you share it. And so this is where it comes back again, as you said, to trusting that inner wisdom, because that can't actually be taught to you.
No.
You can't learn that. That can only be lived. That's learning through that lived experience. I love that so much. Yes.
So good. Okay, I think we're going to need to do a whole lot of. We almost need our own podcast. I did just say that before. I think it's not a no conversation. It's a possible exploration. The Thrive Factor channel, but just to muse on archetypes for endless episodes. Anyway, you have another archetype which has been pivotal for you in understanding her. I feel like the final of your 4 archetypes is not necessarily the most powerful, but she can definitely be the one yielding most power at times. She has a big influence on every single part of your life, your work, who you are in the world. And I feel like getting to know her and understanding her and her potential by using that lens of your inspire believer has been your greatest transformation. Yeah, of stepping into who you are, not being a new Kerryn, but really stepping up and stepping more into who you already were, because there's that expansion, that joy of, okay, now I understand. This is who I am. This is who I said I wanted to be, but I actually am already her. So tell us more.
I love that. I love that so much. As kids, we believe in magic. We just have this innate ability for imagination and play and, endless possibilities. And when I discovered that I had this archetype, it really was, for me, it was joyful. It was such a relief, and it was so comforting, because I was like, I don't have to keep trying to be something, because everything that I've been trying to achieve or do or experience, I already have, but it's not been acknowledged, or it's not been integrated, or it's not been accepted, because I always walked, I guess I always walked outside of the box.
Well, yeah, which is a typical shapeshifter alchemist expression.
I was like, I never fitted into a box. I always walked outside of the box. I walked around it. I walked on the other side of the road. I was always outside of the box, looking inside the box at everyone else that's inside the box, going, how do I get from here to there? Because I don't fit in there. And, in my life quest, and I've certainly talked about this a lot, with my clients and in my business and in what I share, is, I have honestly felt that my whole life has been a journey of self-discovery. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? And, and to understand and finally know that comes from having this archetype. It really was such a relief, because I was like, well, you know what, I can just be who I am. And yes, I'm so good, and we are, all of you out there who have this archetype as well will understand this. You can be in a crowd, and you could literally shapeshift, morph yourself to match any situation or any experience in order to fit in. But you're not consciously doing it to fit in. It's something that happens subconsciously.
Yes.
So you're not actually consciously aware that you're shifting and changing. And, I find it so interesting, because I don't know how many times I used to say to people, I have a work hat, I have a mum hat, I have a wife hat, I have a partner hat, I have all these different hats, and or masks, mask or a hat. And, and I used to be like, I just want to take the mask off, and who am I behind the mask? And again, with, identity has been such a huge driver because we are labeled with responsibilities or roles or expectations, and we just get lost.
Yeah,
And
so
then
much, so much. There's an innate curiosity as a human being
yeah.
to ask, who am I? And again, if we
Yes,
just talked about the mental teachers, the wise scholars of the
yes,
ancient, Greek and Roman realms, for example, though those philosophers were the first ones to muse on the know thyself and who are you? Who am I?
yes,
And it's been a question that every human being has asked throughout history. And yet, for a shapeshifter alchemist, on a different scale to every one of the other 11 archetypes in the Thrive Factor framework, that question, I feel, often goes unanswered. And it's like you almost feel like you're not yourself, you're not able to be anything really because you don't have the answer to that. Whereas other archetypes can get clear, like the mental teacher, like I'm here, I know I'm here to learn, to teach. The inspired
yeah,
believer, I'm here to be inspired, to inspire. The advocate rescuer, to use your other archetype, I'm here to, to share and to lead with compassion.
yeah,
The shapeshifter alchemist, what am I here to do? Because I'm so multidimensional and ever changing and ever shifting
yes.
that how do I like it's
And
feels
it's
ungrounded and
fluid.
untethered.
Yes, I was just going to say there's no solidity.
Yeah.
So there's no solid ground. Yes, you can be grounded, but there's no real firm, solid foundation
Mm.
because there's a desire for freedom to be able to shift and move and change in whatever that cycle may be, whatever the season may be, whatever the circumstance may be, that requires growth or transformation
Mm.
in any given moment. So the inspired believer can get stuck in a rut.
Yes.
The shapeshifter alchemist, yes, for so many years I had this dream, this visualization of just wanting to escape and just be a monk in a hilltop cave and just meditate my life away. Which I can see now is very, very shapeshifter inspired. But even in having said all of that, the relief was I don't have to try and be normal.
Whatever normal is anyway, right?
Right, because who defines that? Who defines what that is? But we all grow up with some sense that there is something out there that is normal, that community or family or society tells us is normal.
Yes.
And as a shapeshifter, you can't fit into that because there's a fluidity to who you are in any situation, and you're not going to be the exact same person in every single situation because you'll show up in the way that is needed in that moment based on the people that are around you.
Completely. In observing shapeshifter alchemists, because this is another archetype that frequently shows up in my community, I'm not surprised because the Thrive Factor framework is a mechanism for you to better understand yourself, where you felt like you have no answers to who am I for the majority of your life, however old you actually currently are. But what I've observed more and more, I would say, in the last few years, Kerryn, is that there is a maturity in the shapeshifter alchemist of that acceptance of the multidimensional, ever-changing, ever-evolving need for variety aspect of your soul.
Yeah.
And when you can come to a space of me having different interests and needs and desires and being a lot of different things all at once is actually my power. It's actually my
Yes.
gift to the world, where you've been told more than likely most of your life that you're unfocused. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You never commit.
Yes.
Flaky. You're flaky is
Yep.
another word I hear from shapeshifter alchemists. No one understands you. You're a bit strange. You never kind of do anything that makes sense. Like all of those things of things,
Yeah. Yeah.
phrases and words and memories that shapeshifter alchemists have shared with me consistently over the years. But when they can come to but I am all these things, and
Mm.
tomorrow will be a whole lot more. And that is actually the best part of me. And the world actually needs people like me who are not bogged down in being a black and white one way and this is the only way to be kind of version, you know, who are able to actually be committed, but also be committed to multiple things at once.
Yes, because all of those things are so relevant and valid in their worlds. And just as you were speaking, you know, if we look at nature, if we look at the universe, if we look at the cycles of the seasons, nothing actually stays the same.
No.
And I feel that this is where, you know, shapeshifter alchemists can really tune into and tap into the essence of the energy of life, the multidimensional realms, universal consciousness, you know, being able to offer many ways to achieve a result through business. And I know even for myself, there's many modalities that I've been drawn to, which are all at their core are ways to support you in understanding who you are, tapping into who you are, aligning to your heart, your soul, to really, it's all self-discovery actually, with the loving and accepting yourself with compassion and kindness. And I can see now where I once felt overwhelmed because, you know, there's so much noise out there. There's so many ways, you know, there's so many experts out there telling you the right way that you should do, you know, do your business, do whatever, how you should show up, which doesn't actually work for a shapeshifter alchemist, because I can take, I used to say, you know, I consider myself to be, you know, a pot of soup, which is probably a cauldron. If we think shapeshifter, you know, a pot of soup. And, you know, and I can take, you know, an ingredient from hundreds of different people, just one little thing that might resonate, and pop that into my pot of soup. And then what I take out to deliver is me, is my voice, is my version, is my, you know, it's how it's transformed.
That's it. That's the essence of alchemy. If we think about that too, you know, we talk about an alchemist being, you know, an individual that can take something of seemingly little or no value and turn it into something of incredible wealth and value. And that being able to take from wherever it's needed in the moment and bring it together is the alchemy, you know, bring it together in space. And shapeshifter alchemists, you talked about magic right at the beginning in describing this archetype. It is the archetype of magic. You know, we talked about the inspired believers, currency being energy. For the shapeshifter alchemist, it is magic. I'm very quick to say, and you've heard me say this multiple times over, Kerryn, that when I use the word magic, I'm not predefining it as being anything particular. For a shapeshifter alchemist, it's understanding what that word means for you and what to you feels like or is magic or magical. And doing more of that, because that is your way to ground in all of these different aspects and, you know, variations of yourself so that you can create an alchemy that is of incredible value to others. So often when you hear conversations with, you know, that people are having around something that they've done, you know, a learning experience, whatever it was, probably learning experience if there's a mentor teacher involved, but something where the shapeshifter alchemist was an archetype that was in that individual that was leading the thing that the person was involved in, whether it's one-on-one or a group. And people will say, I don't know what happened, but it was like magic. You know, a shapeshifter alchemist has been at play, right? They've been out there doing their thing. And a lot of shapeshifter alchemists over the years from a business perspective has said to me, I can't define what I do. I don't have words for it. And I ask people and they say, I don't know. It just felt like magic. Yeah. And whereas you have other combinations of archetypes and their ideal clients won't use the word magic. And they also may be able to very clearly define, we did this and we did this and I did this and then this happened. Not for shapeshifter alchemists as a person involved in that or as a person delivering or facilitating that.
Do you know, that's so true. And a perfect example of that is I have a sacred self immersion retreat that I'll run a couple of times a year. And one of the attendees was actually, she gave me some feedback and she was like, oh, so-and-so was asking me, you know, what did we do? And she was like, I don't know. but it was amazing. And that's true in that environment. And this is key too for a shapeshifter alchemist. When you do find something that feels magical to you, when you're doing it, it's almost, you really are tapping into something so otherworldly.
Yes.
And your ability to be able to take others on a journey, regardless of what your tool or what your vehicle is, your ability to take somebody else on a journey that is so transformational and profoundly moving for them, that could be so simple. And
Right.
anybody else outside of that might look at that and go, what is that? Like, that's nothing. But when they're actually in that experience, because you're sitting with a shapeshifter alchemist who has the ability also to, I guess, move in that quantum fields, you know, to move in that energy of universal consciousness, to be able to create a shift, not only in yourself, so we can create the shifts within ourselves, and then that generates a shift within the others that are around them.
Completely, completely. If we think more broadly about the business community, a lot of individuals that have the shapeshifter alchemist are women that find themselves in healing businesses or working with
Yes.
healing modalities, even if they're working in what we would maybe call more traditional business spaces. They often refer to themselves using the word spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
I often see them using alchemy or alchemist as well, without knowing whether they even have this archetype. And my thought on that is that moving into working in those spaces is somewhere where they feel a little bit more like they could belong, or they're not going to be ridiculed or judged, or all the things that have happened through their life for not fitting in and for wanting to be different and for having diverse interests in different things. Those are often the same people that don't get when someone, they're doing, say, business learning of some kind, and they're being told, you must focus on one thing. You have to have one message. You have to have one niche. You have to have one ideal client. You can only sell one thing at once. And they just like, well, what do you mean? Because it goes against everything that you ladies actually stand for and understand about how the world actually can work. So I know that for a lot of shapeshifter alchemists, when, like yourself, Kerryn, come to understand this archetype, is such a huge sense of relief of knowing that you can actually use the gifts of this archetype to create your own kind of medicine, if you like, your own magic, your own alchemy, which is multidimensional. It's got lots of different things in it, and offer that to the world, right? And that's where
So
the
powerful.
transformation, expands and amplifies on a whole different scale, because you're able to actually bring all of you to the table. Because I know in your business, you don't just show up with the shapeshifter alchemist. All four of your archetypes come to the experience. But this one, I feel like, is almost like the glue pulling everything else together.
She is 100%. I totally agree with that. And I feel that often because, and she's also, she just shows up so much in every aspect of my work, because in every aspect of my work, there is an element of magic. There is an element of transformation. There is an element of self-discovery and self-acceptance, and, and understanding and accepting you for who you are is so powerful. And I just want to add to that also with the shapeshifter alchemist and having multiple modalities, because there is, we can reach more than one genre or more than one niche, because often the learning that we've done, yes, mentor teacher, but that self-discovery journey or the interests that you have such a large toolbox of support that you can offer to others, that is the difficulty in just going, I don't just work on this one thing. There's so many different things that we can work on.
It's a good
Yeah.
good thing. I love it. We've got so much more that we can talk about. I know this has been a long episode already, and I'm never going to apologize for the length of the episode. So if you don't like long episodes, the occasional one is not going to be one for you. But trust me, the longer ones, we've got a deeper conversation. So listeners, hang in there. To wrap up for today, Kerryn, I'm going to ask you some of the same questions I've been asking all of our guests, just to bring it all together and to remember that She Leads, She Thrives is also about looking at leadership and how are we thriving in the world. So the first question I'd love to ask you is, what role does leadership play in your life and business?
The role that it plays, I always have felt and believed and had everything that I've done is transparency, walking my talk, not asking others to do something that you're not prepared to do yourself. It's really, I'm going to say walking your talk. So for leadership for me is, I don't prescribe anything, or I don't teach anything, or I don't encourage or support or coach anything that I don't actually do and use myself every day.
Yeah. There's integrity just
Yes.
like oozing out of that in the best possible way. I love it. So how do you know when you're thriving?
So I know when I'm thriving when I feel good. I know when I'm thriving when I see the transformation in the women that I'm working with. I know that I'm thriving when the right people come to me to work with and I don't actually have to force it or go out of my way. They just show up. Again, Shapeshifter Alchemist. I know that I'm thriving when I feel that I'm aligned, I've got energy, I feel inspired, and I'm excited every day to show up. And I guess too, I'm thriving. I know I'm thriving when I'm comfortable in my own skin and I'm really, really happy with who I am.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm loving all the variety of answers that's coming through. There's some similar traits there, but this is another thing that is so important for us all to understand, is that leadership and thriving are such unique expressions. They're not one thing. So to hear the variety of the different answers that are being shared, I hope is inspiring for anyone who's listening. Very much so. My inspired believer is hoping that you're getting your, like, your pom-poms out in a metaphorical sense and going, yes, I get that, even if you've heard 10 different answers to those questions. So before I ask you the final question to glean a bit more of your wisdom, how can people connect with you the easiest? Where do they find you online?
So they can find me on Instagram, so Kerryn_Holistic Essentials. And I have a website, holisticessentials.com.au, and I'm on Facebook, Holistic Essentials Therapy and Consulting.
So we will make sure, like we will for every one of our guest episodes, that the links so that you can find them with ease are available in the show notes, which will always be on the thrivefactorco.com website. So that if you go to the blog, you'll be able to see all the episodes and find Kerryn there. And I also say often, if you can't find one of our guests, reach out to Team Thrive Factor and we will make sure that we connect you with them. So to wrap up for today, even though I could talk to you for hours longer, what's one final piece of wisdom, tap into all of your archetypes here, that you'd like to share with the ambitious and genius souls that are tuning in today?
The final piece of wisdom is always be true to yourself. Always be true to yourself. And if what you are doing, dreaming, creating, inspiring to be, wanting to share with the world, if it feels aligned, and by aligned, it's, it resonates with you in your heart, your mind, it's congruent with every area of your life, then you are completely being true to yourself in every aspect.
What a way to finish. Big breath out, everybody. So again, I think we can mash together episodes of the answers to the final piece of wisdom as well in the future. I love it. Thank you so much, Kerryn. Thank you everyone for listening in. I really appreciate the fact that you're here. It's really great to see the numbers of downloads that are happening for every episode we have of She Leads, She Thrives. I would show up and create these episodes, the solo ones and the guest ones, even if there was no one listening. But I love the fact that there are people listening all over the world. So thank you so much. If you haven't yet, make sure you're following the podcast, go and rate it, share it with your friends. so that we can ripple thriving out into the world in a much bigger way. Kerryn, thank you from, the depths of my heart for showing
Thank
up and
you.
being here and sharing this with me today. And everyone, have an amazing day. Keep thriving wherever you are in the world. Thanks for tuning into today's episode. You are so valued and appreciated. Aside from this podcast, my favorite place to hang out online is definitely Instagram. So come and join me, Shannon_the Thrive Factor. And no, my DMs are always open for genuine questions and connections. For all the latest Thrive Factor goodness, visit thrivefactorco.com/links, where you'll find more about thriving in life and business. Be sure to subscribe and rate the show and share it with your friends. Let's amplify thriving the world over.